name Quill, first name Hard, you know the rest. Come on, you know you can't test. Behind the mask, half alien, half man, with a little bit of a different origin. Mother worked hard cause my father wasn't there. Grew up an orphan, life ain't fair. Master of the sun came by to say that great things were on the way. And now the names, every alien race, every villainous foe knows that if it's Pete Quill, then they gotta go. Wanna know that, catch the blowback from the firearm. One of four elements, why you gotta try to harm innocent folk? For that I gotta fight, gotta save the galaxy tonight. And that's why they know me by a different name these days. With a bunch of a-holes, that's my team these days. Better check the rep, better watch where you step, cause the Guardians of the Galaxy got next. We don't do nothing unless it's hot to death. Better check the rep, better watch where you step. Coming for Earth, you know you better step quick, cause the man behind the mask better known as this. That's what they call me.
Welcome back to another Hard Knock Life. I'm your boy Keith Chow. I didn't have a show planned this week, but then a little movie came out over the weekend called Guardians of the Galaxy. It made a good bazillion dollars, or maybe, I'm sorry, it made a bazillion units at the box office, and elicited a lot of responses from folks on the internet. So I figured why not get some of my friends together to kind of talk about why a movie about the freaking Guardians of the Galaxy made $94 million and made Chris Pratt the internet's boyfriend. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring out, I have probably the largest panel in the history of Hard Knock Life to talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy tonight. So we're going to kick it off with someone who has probably a contradictory opinion about the Guardians of the Galaxy from the rest of the world. You know him as the columnist for the Wall Street Journal's Tal Jones. He's also my partner in the Secret Identities universe. And this fall, he's going to be a showbiz dad. So welcome to Hard Knock Life, Jeff Yang. Welcome back to Hard Knock Life.
Thank you, Mr. Keith Chow. And I mean, you know, honestly, I don't know how contradictory my view is. I think it's, I call it the rational perspective, really.
I thought you viscerally hated the Guardians of the Galaxy. Where I don't know.
You know, yeah, well, just because I want Chris Pratt to die in a fire does not mean I viscerally hate the movie itself. Just kidding. I actually like the guy.
Dude, what do you mean? How do you talk anything bad about the Pratt?
Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, and I don't. It's not that I'm just resentful of his six-pack. It's the movie overall, you know, was mild summer entertainment. It was amusing, and I think that there were moments which were, you know, which were surprisingly funny, given the fact that, frankly, I had a very, very low bar set for a movie about the Guardians of the Galaxy. But that's exactly it. I mean, I think there's either some sort of weird rebound effect where people thought it was going to suck so badly that what actually arrived in theaters caused them to blink a little and say, hey, this is actually not ass, you know? Yeah. So, or honestly, the rest of the summer has been a little bit grim. I mean, we haven't really had that big, relatively feel-good, just smart enough film that hits on all the cylinders of, you know, kind of geek fanboy, you know, strokage.
We're just going to talk about, you know, how crazy it is that Marvel can literally put crap out and it shit's gold, basically. So the next person on the panel I wanted to introduce, she's making her return to Hard Knock Life after a few weeks off. She had been going on a streak there for a while, but it's great to have her back. You know her as Blasian Bitch on Twitter. It is N'Jaila Rhee. Welcome back to Hard Knock Life.
Hey guys.
We missed you.
I missed you guys too. It's actually really funny on Twitter. Somebody is like, "Oh, I remember you on Hard Knock Life, and you haven't been on it. Like, what did you do to get kicked off?" Like, I didn't do anything.
I'm taking it you caught Guardians of the Galaxy like the rest of the world did.
I've seen it twice already.
Me too.
I saw it opening weekend twice, which I very rarely do. Especially because in the midst of all that, Beyonce dropped a remix, which just gave me my life. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to the movies. There's a remix. But then I saw it the next day for a second time and still enjoyed it as much as I saw it the first time. I'm not a super fanboy where I'm frothing at the mouth if anybody has things to say about the movie, because I definitely think it's not a perfect movie. I think it took characters that weren't exactly shining in the source material and, made them likable.
My third guest for this evening is another frequent contributor to the Nerds of Color. He's been on Hard Knock Life several times in the past as well. It's spoken word artist Rodrigo Sanchez-Chavarria. Welcome back, Rodrigo.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Again, you wouldn't be on the show if you didn't see Guardians of the Galaxy. Where do you fall in this spectrum of visceral hate that Jeff represents, even though he denies it, and pure fanboy, just unadulterated joy that the rest of the world?
So I fall in one aspect of it. There's parts of the movie that I was like, but then there's other parts where like I was entertained and I laughed and so I watched it on 3D IMAX, which is actually the first time I ever watched anything in 3D IMAX. So I had to apologize to the person next to me because I kept on dodging what kept coming my way, and I kept on saying whoa, 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 and everybody else seemed to done that before, but I hadn't. So, but
That's adorable.
I love the soundtrack. So
welcome to the world of 3D movie going, Rodrigo. Finally, and I think I buried the lead a little bit, I'm actually really, really psyched to have our next guest on the show tonight. You probably know him as being the supervillain of Jeopardy, but he's also one of the most insightful writers on the internet right now. You probably write a lot of his columns on the Daily Beast. It is Arthur Chu on Hard Knock Life. Welcome, Arthur. I am so excited to have you on.
Hi.
You have made kind of a second career out of your writings on the internet and embracing your nerdiness, and I really dig that. So welcome to Hard Knock Life.
No, I'm glad to be here.
You also fall on the side of enjoying Guardians of the Galaxy, or do you hate it the way Jeff viscerally hates it?
I didn't have the same visceral reaction that my wife did. She's a huge fan of the movie. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I actually do have some thoughts. Like, I disagree that it's just another summer movie. I think you can see that Marvel has a formula in this movie, but this movie also there are specific reasons why I think this movie grabbed people the way that it did, and they have a lot to do with like where the superhero, the comic book adaptation genre is right now, and a lot to do with what it is that people want from a summer movie that some movies haven't been giving them. So
no, actually,
yeah.
I think, and that's where I think I want to start, because that also Jeff kind of mentioned that a little bit when he was talking in terms of it was this bright, colorful, happy, joyful film in a summer where everything is pretty grim, and I mean, and as you said, Arthur, like the superhero movie itself has become like grimdark, and I blame Christopher Nolan for that, because it's like every movie has to be this like tortured, sad hero who has to. The only way he can save the day is by breaking his opponent's neck, and I think it's nice to finally have like heroes who are like enjoying being a hero.
Right. It's not just that though. It's the whole movie. It's fan servicey, but it's unabashedly fan servicey, and that makes people happy. So it starts with Star-Lord doing this dance to come and get your love. The soundtrack is nostalgia because the movie is nostalgia. The soundtrack comes from the 70s because the movie is about a comic book line that comes from the 70s and is trying to recapture that Silver Age feeling of comics. That this is saying this is comics, this is the Silver Age, this is the bright four-color, Jack Kirby world that comics used to be about, and it's the opposite of the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins, saying like we're going to make comics shades of gray and we're going to set it in the real world and we're going to address real world issues, and this is like the total opposite of that. And I'm not saying that Christopher Nolan's Batman films were bad. I think they were amazing. But even in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Captain America: Winter Soldier is very Nolan-esque in that way. It's about the war on terror. It's about global surveillance. It's about shades of gray and not knowing who to trust. But that's a Captain America movie. It's set on Earth in America, And Guardians of the Galaxy, by its very nature, it's like this isn't a galaxy far, far away, or it's this is in this colorful, imaginary world where we don't have to think about that for a while, and that really pushes a lot of buttons for a lot of people. In some ways, that's like the escapist comics medium. It's capturing one side of what comics have been about, and doing so very skillfully.
Okay. I want to push back on one thing here, which is this. I think you can have space opera. In fact, you can have fun, even cartoonish space opera that actually has a plot that you couldn't drive the Death Star through. I mean, seriously, there's if you actually step back from the 70s soundtrack and the talking tree and the cute furry animal with big guns and Zoe Saldana with big guns and whatever, what you get left, right, is a movie with a MacGuffin, which they're chasing, which in any number of ways they could have resolved the issues that they were facing without all of the intergalactic journeying and stress and angst and kind of ridiculous one-on-one fisticuffs. I mean, there's just so much. I don't even know what to say. It's like everything was to me a set of set pieces that were strung together with the very slim, the very tenuous agenda of trying to find this one Infinity Stone, right? Which ultimately, was simply required for the purposes of trading in for food stamps or something. I mean, there was
4 billion of units. Them, though. I mean, 4 billion of them is a lot. That's a lot of food stamps.
But you know what I mean? It's like, let's think about it. There are galaxy-spanning movies that have galactic goals and galactic premises. This was about a bunch of people trying to score, some quick cash, and in the process deciding they were going to try to save this planet that they had no connection to. And in fact, prior to the opening of the movie, either did not ever set foot on, or were actually actively trying to destroy. You know what I'm saying? Like there was nothing.
I also think that's also, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I also, personally, I feel like, but that's kind of like the appeal of it, that it was about these people who were not. It's the Han Solo, right? I mean, there's a reason they keep comparing Star-Lord to Han Solo. He's the selfish smuggler who gains a conscience by the end of the movie and decides to save the universe rather than save his own neck, and that's the hero's journey that Chris Pratt goes on from the beginning of the movie to the end. I want to bring in N'Jaila here for a second, though, because I think that as someone, you did like the film, you've seen it twice, I've seen it twice too. I think that the formula that Jeff talks about is a formula, a plot formula that I think most of the Marvel movies have kind of embraced.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to say that. It's like every Marvel movie so far has had a magical MacGuffin that everybody's chasing, and it's always been an Infinity Stone. It's just a different one. So I don't find that so bad, but I also kind of just think this movie was very much about the relationships with the characters and identifying with the fact that they all are essentially kind of failures. I think what sets us apart from a lot of the other Marvel Universe movies, a lot of them, it's a lot of like confidence porn almost. You have Tony Stark who's super confident, and these are just people that they're bad at what they do. You might say that Gamora was like okay, but this is the one time that she just royally screws up. So you can identify.
Gamora was the worst like cold-blooded assassin I've ever seen.
Yes.
For me, I always thought Gamora was kind of boring in the comic. I thought she was kind of this character that gave like the one note she wants to get back at her father, and then no spoilers, but that's like the one thing she does, and not too well in the comics either. So I kind of felt like at least here, like there's something endearing about her. There's like I cared about what was happening to her. Like I never cared about her in the comic because I kind of felt like there's 1,000 characters that were like Gamora. She's supposed to be, the badass violence chick that then screws everybody because apparently that's what empowerment is. And I'm not the biggest. I don't really care for Zoe Saldana. I don't care how pretty she is because I don't want to put her in my mouth in any way, shape, or form. So she's nothing for me. I've I've actively avoided movies that she's in because I don't want to see her face.
Boy,
And
that
I
leaves
like
you out of
the
a lot of
movie.
franchises at that point.
I know, that's a lot of movies.
But I also felt like this was, like Keith was saying, this is one of the few just unrepentantly, like, joyful summer action movies, which they don't make anymore.
Yeah.
This really looked like, had the feeling of like an action movie from my childhood. And
Yeah.
I liked it for that reason.
Because, I mean, as much as we love Star Wars, as much as we love, you know, that first Star Wars film, that's not saying anything about the prequels, but that first A New Hope, you know, there are parts in that movie where you cringe watching it 30-some-odd years later. Like I want to go to Tachi Station and get some power converters.
Yeah.
It's still great, you know, 30 years later.
Yeah.
So I think there's, like, you know, but that joy and that wonder that, like, Star Wars kind of captured for kids in the late 70s, I think is what Guardians of the Galaxy is bringing to kids.
By the way, I did take my 7-year-old and I did take my 10-year-old to see Guardians of the Galaxy. So, and they
What did they
loved
think?
it. So, and they loved it to the point that they made me rename our wireless router to We Are Groot. So.
Oh, so everyone, you live in Minneapolis and you live and you want to know Rodrigo's Wi-Fi password.
No, you don't want to know if you see We Are Groot somewhere in the St. Paul area, then you're pretty close to my house. But that's what my kids made me rename it to.
Like, the craziest thing to me, beyond just like how good the movie is or isn't, is the fact that we're talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, unless you were like the dorkiest, nerdiest comic book geek.
I'm kind of
in the
offended by
world.
that because I.
No, but you know what I mean? Like,
The
Guardians of the
Galaxy.
Galaxy is like E-list at best in the terms of,
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
overall
I got really
pantheon.
excited when I saw Cosmo. Me and my brother like, oh my god, and like nobody else in the audience. And when I saw the Cocoon, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And nothing, just blank
I'm just
faces.
gonna. I hear what you're saying about the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy, but and you know, yeah, we don't care about Xandar. It's not a real place. But in Star Wars, when did we ever see Alderaan? We get upset about Alderaan being. We've never been there. Well, who are they fighting to defend at the end of the movie? We're the rebels on Yavin 4. We've never met them either. You know, the only people we care about are our central characters.
The movie's
which
called
is
Star Wars, right? It's a gigantic war between two huge armies. The individuals who are kind of playing this role out within it are within the context of an epic battle of good and evil. This was, I think, N'Jaila actually hit it on the nose, and I will bow actually to her interpretation as the one interpretation which I would actually accept as a legitimate reason to love the movie, which is twofold. One is lovable losers, always a big win, right? And the second is it is nostalgically reminiscent of the sort of, like, you know, retrospectively kind of terrible but always fun movies of the childhood that we had growing up. And I'll buy all of that, you know, because I enjoyed all sorts of stuff that I like Space 1999, whatever, right? You know, stuff like that. There's a place for all that, but realistically, that's not enough to me to be able to overlook just gaping abysses of you know, plot hand waving and set pieces that were designed to get laughs, but not really to actually develop character or advance the flow of the narrative. And you know, the one thing I also want to say about the fact that yes, the MacGuffin is in every single Marvel movie at this point. There's a difference. If you're on Earth and an Earthling and you're trying to prevent Earth from being destroyed, maybe you do chase after some random, mystical, abstract super gem. But if you are a mercenary and you're getting your ass kicked and sent to the kiln and, you know, facing up against the avatar of you know, universal annihilation or something, why would you do this? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then when you're not even going to make the money at the end of it, they still decide to link hands and save Xandar.
For the entire universe. I mean, they say that. Like, Rocket's plan is to go fly as far as they can before he destroys it. You know, like, Thanos is going to destroy everything, not just. It's still.
I mean, Peter Quill has the line in the movie, like, "I'm one of the idiots that live in it. That's why I want to save it." When Rocket asks him, "Why do you want to save the galaxy?" He says, "Because I live in it." And I think the idea, like, one of my favorite scenes, especially upon the second viewing, was when they actually found out what it was. I think the whole beginning of the movie, no one knows. I mean, you know as an audience, but no one in the film knows that they're going after the Infinity Stone. And once they find out what it does, and like my favorite scene is when they walk out of the collector's office and like Rocket is like, "Why do you still have that?"
They're horrified. Yeah.
He's so like the horrified raccoon. So I mean, I agree that like there are kind of, it's about set pieces, it's about these action set pieces that are strung together. But I don't know, sometimes in the criticisms, and there aren't a lot of criticisms of the film, I feel like the people are describing like Transformers Age of Extinction and not necessarily Guardians of the Galaxy, because I feel like in terms of like thin plot and like just excuses to blow shit up, that's more prevalent in like the Michael Bay film and not necessarily. I feel like this is quirkier and more ironic and more subversive than like the Transformers, which is completely cynical about everything, and it's just it's everything is transparently bad.
I mean, I would even push back on I would even say, like, the thin plot, if you want to call it that. Like, I had a conversation on Twitter where someone said Guardians of the Galaxy is basically a D&D campaign, and I agree. Normally, that's a negative thing to say about a script. It's these characters that we all know, they have these personality archetypes, they all play a specific role, and random stuff happens to them, and we see them react to it. But there's a reason there's a reason people play D&D, and there's a reason people enjoy this kind of episodic adventure, the sitcom narrative or the superhero comics narrative. That is actually a lot truer originally superheroes just had an issue, they did a thing, they faced some threat, and then it was the same superheroes did something completely different in the next issue. What we've seen is in recent years is people deciding that plot arcs, serialization, makes something better, and there's an argument for that. But there's also a degree to which people are pushing back against that. We have like the ultimate serialization in Lost, right? You watch episode 15 of season 3 of Lost, it's like, what the hell is going on? You have to watch from the beginning, right? This is like barrier to entry where the plot becomes so important that you have to study and pay attention in order to know what's going on. And again, like in the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the Captain America films, you won't really get what's going on in Winter Soldier if you don't know who Hydra are, if you don't know what was happening in the first Captain America movie, if you don't know the pre-existing relationship with Cap and Bucky. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is made for that side of things, people who like the idea of lots of intrigue, who like the spy kind of narrative. And Guardians of the Galaxy is all the way on the other side of it. Like, we knew this setting was kind of dumb from the very beginning. when we see a guy in a leather jacket flying through space, on rocket boots, when we see the planet full of conspicuously human aliens, they just put out there, this is kind of a dumb setting. This is the kind of story you made up with your friends when you were 12 years old. This is a universe of imagination, and it's real in the sense that the characters are real, but the plot and the setting are absurd. That's sort of the point, that we're going to see if we can make you feel bad for a talking raccoon, even though the very idea that he is a talking raccoon. Why are there raccoons? Why would someone make a raccoon intelligent? Why are there raccoons in space, far away from Earth? We don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the absurdity of it being played sincerely, that yes, it's ridiculous, but still it's sad that he hates himself for who he is, that people treat him like an animal. We cut through all the plausibility stuff just to, yes, it's totally implausible, but let's commit to the idea,
Well, there are a lot of things that I wanted to touch on that Arthur just brought up, and one of them, I want to circle back a little bit to when you talked about the episodic nature of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I feel like that's one of the strengths of Marvel's approach to their movies, and also maybe one of its potentially detriments because, like you said, we're 10 movies deep now, and one season of a television show with 2 more television shows coming up, and you got the Netflix things coming up. So it's becoming this sprawling thing that so far it's still generating billions and billions and billions of dollars, but perhaps there will be a day where people will stop being able to follow everything. And then you have the opposite approach from Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is the corporate parent of DC Comics, and they've done their Batman films. They did 3 Christopher Nolan Batman films, and that's done. They did a Superman Returns film 5 or 6 years ago, and they rebooted Superman with Man of Steel. They have a whole bunch of different television franchises that are not connected. You have Gotham that's coming out this year, which is the Batman prequel TV series. You have Arrow and Flash, which are going to be interconnected, but disconnected from the rest of the DC stuff. You have Constantine, which is the adaptation of Hellblazer. You have all of these, DC's kind of taking the opposite approach, where they have all of these different things that are not connected. N'Jaila, as a fan of the comics milieu, there is definitely that appeal to comics where everything is interconnected and continuity. I mean, the whole point of being a nerd is to study continuity. But DC is taking the other approach. Which do you think is the right approach?
Well, for me, I when I looked at Guardians of the Galaxy, I know I'm a fan. So for me, the stakes in that movie, I know that they're high because I know the war that is raging. It's not just, there's going to be Skrulls, and there's going to be crazy sauce is going to happen. So that's something I can look forward to. So I really think everybody goes, oh, I don't see how Guardians of the Galaxy connects to the universe. I want to be just wait, it's going to be awesome. Yeah. Just wait. So I think that building anticipation for me, it connects to that sweet spot in my nerd brain that I want that so much. And the DC universe, I very vocally, I hated Man of Steel. I think it's the antithesis of the character. I felt like Nolan's Batman was kind of bad fan fiction, and he doesn't really get the point of Batman. I care nothing about Gotham. I hate Arrow with passion. I feel like it's an abomination, and which is very weird because it has such a strong female audience. Probably because it's on the CW, but they nerfed every female character because I guess they didn't want to have metahumans. They didn't want to have a budget, but now they will have metahumans. But Black Canary's not going to be a metahuman, and others. DC, it's not just the logistical approach in terms of continuity versus disparate continuities. It's also as Arthur was saying, Marvel says, you know what, these things are unbelievable, but we're still going to make you care about them. That was the whole hook with the original Donner Superman, right? You will believe a man can fly. Whereas DC, current modern DC, has taken that Nolan approach where we're going to make everything so friggin' believable that we're going to wipe all of the joy out of it and all of the wonder, and we're going to explain to the minutest detail why Batman has ears and why Superman, can, all these different things. So, and even Arrow and Flash are kind of, well, we don't know about the Flash, but we assume the Flash are also in that kind of milieu where it's everything's very gritty and dark and real world. Do you think that that's the right approach for comic book properties, or do you think Marvel has figured it out and that's why they're making gazillions of dollars and Warner, other than Batman, isn't? Well, I think it boils down to you have Marvel Studios. That's their property. That's their babies, and they're treating them as such. And Warner Brothers and different studios are dealing with DC properties, and you have a bunch of people in a boardroom and test audiences saying what they're going to push out, and I think it shows a lot.
Well, DC is a Warner Brothers property, but isn't Marvel, especially in the last couple of years, the punchline of Sean Taylor's Guardians review was Marvel, your Disney showing. So Rodrigo, do you think that Disney approach or that corporate approach is what's kind of preventing Warner Brothers from really getting in the game? Because we just saw this week that Warner's has announced they're trying to be like Marvel. They just announced for their movies, their DC movie slots for the next 5 or 6 years. They haven't said what those movies are going to be, but they're basically releasing 2 DC movies a year starting next year, or starting in 2016. So Rodrigo, what do you think?
I think the fact that you mentioned that, they're already seeing that if they're trying to make money some sort of way, the Marvel approach is the way of doing it. Arrow, like you say, it's gritty. It's it just seems more real in the aspect of like you can identify like it's filmed in Canada. It looks like it could come out of like someone's backyard or Detroit for that fact, with all the industrial buildings and all the other stuff. So it plays more to the reality of what I'm used to seeing, and what I've grown up with. Living in Minnesota, there's too much green stuff around here. I'm a city kid, always been a city kid, so that kind of like attracts me to it. The action finally picks up, and I think just Marvel just totally understands what they're trying to do with their product, and then putting it out there. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, Gamora was supposed to be a weapon that just misfired, honestly. And, it's like it jammed or something. It's like it just didn't. It's just you didn't clean the gun right or whatever it was, what it was that you want to use. But it's just it was entertaining. There were points of me where I was watching it and I was like, oh. And there were points of me where I was laughing, and so like I brought up the point. It's just the funniest Marvel movie you've seen.
It's easily, yeah.
Easily it is. I mean, it's got a bunch of one-liners, and so when was the last time you remember? I mean, you don't catch that sense of humor in the, maybe you can catch a glimpse of it in the Avengers, but not to that degree that it was displayed in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I mean, Marvel knows what they're doing, what their niche is, and now they're trying to just amplify it. And looks like Warner Brothers is trying to play in catch up, and we'll see. I mean, with Flash, with Gotham, I mean, we'll see what we'll see what that develop. Maybe they're going to go more the television route. That seems to be working better for them that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, DC has always had the television game on lock. It's the movies that have failed them. I mentioned that, it's the nostalgia trick that Guardians plays is that it is a throwback to those like action comedies. There aren't a lot of like action comedies anymore because it's as much a comedy as it is like a sci-fi space opera. But one of the things that I brought up, and this is something that if you follow Jeff on Twitter or Facebook, he kind of drew a parallel. I think one of the reasons why I interpreted your critique of Guardians of the Galaxy with visceral hate is that you kind of drew a comparison with Ryan Reynolds and Chris Pratt, and that's what, because clearly if he says Guardians of the Galaxy is like Green Lantern, then he must hate this film because Green Lantern is so indefensible. But going back to like that kind of the disconnect between DC and Warner Bros. DC tried that with Green Lantern though. Like I see what you mean, with that trying to draw that parallel. I feel like Green Lantern wishes it was half of what Guardians of the Galaxy was, but why did Green Lantern fail so miserably when it tried to like thread the needle between action and comedy and like charismatic leading man?
Frankly, I think that Guardians of the Galaxy is riding a lot of the halo effect of the prior movies that have established a universe people want to play in, and because it's a big universe, there's a space for goofy action comedy that doesn't make sense in that universe. DC has made historically a set of disconnected films that have individual characters, not teams, but individual characters that people don't. It's like a hit or miss. If you like Ryan, if both of the people who like Ryan Reynolds, watch Green Lantern, then they'll get 100% on the popularity rating for Rotten Tomatoes from audience, right? But the reality is this. I mean, if you don't like the character, and Green Lantern is one of the shittier characters, one of the shittier major superhero characters in either of the two.
Well, which Green Lantern?
Well, okay, fair enough. I'm going to just talk about the concept of the Green Lantern.
Talk about hell?
I mean, come on. The fact is, they get their power from a ring, and their secret weakness is the color yellow.
There was a fan petition when they heard about the Green Lantern movie to have Hal Jordan be played by Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, well,
and if they'd done that, the movie still might have bombed, but people would remember it a lot more fondly. It's all about like Ryan Reynolds. When people thought of him, it's like, what a pretty boy douche. Van Wilder, right? Like Chris Pratt, he's got the self-effacing nerd thing down, and Ryan Reynolds doesn't. You've got to have credibility to pull that off. You know.
Well, Chris Pratt is what Seth Rogen wanted to try to be when he slimmed down, and he never got all the way over there.
I think, Chris Nolan's movies are good. I think grim, dark movies are good. It's just you have to be good. If you want to be funny, you have to be good. Like, the problem is DC's movies haven't been good. That's all. Like, I thought the Man of Steel sounded like a cool concept for a Superman movie. Make it all mythic and godlike, but it just wasn't good, Like, it comes down to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel like a lot of. I mean, I'm coming off like a DC movie hater, and if anyone knows me, knows that I'm anything but a hater of the. I mean, I actually really like Man of Steel. It has a lot of flaws for sure, but I feel like
this flaws that it sucked ass.
No, I've had this Twitter conversation several times now with Alex Knapp of Forbes. Every time Man of Steel's on TV, I start tweeting about it, and then we end up tweeting back and forth about just like what DC gets right and what they get wrong about their heroes. And I think part of the problem between at least Marvel approach and DC approach is that I feel like deep down, DC is ashamed of their characters, whereas Marvel embraces like I think Arthur said it. Marvel embraces the inherent goofiness of it, but they don't make fun of it. Like DC either avoids it and like masks it with grimdark, or they just make fun of it, like the Schumacher movies or Green Lantern to a certain extent. I think was about like making fun of the concept.
I just don't think DC can take the risks that Marvel has. Like, I would love for there to be a Booster Gold movie, and it's just a comedy, and they just go for it. I think that would be hilarious.
Right.
Because Booster Gold has so many things that just work in movies, especially when it's very self-aware. Because he's basically a con artist that just comes to when everybody sucked for, and just like, I'm gonna be a superhero now with like my remote that everybody has in the future, but you guys don't know it yet. Like, I think that's a great concept, and I just don't think DC would ever have. I don't think enough people or test audiences would be able to do that. Where DC just goes, it's our property, we're gonna make a movie. What? Like, they don't have that like gall that Marvel has.
Like, it's such an interesting flip of like how the comic publishers are though, right? Because like historically, not currently, historically DC was always considered the goofier one because it was like these larger than life mythic heroes who wore underwear on the outside of their clothes, whereas like Marvel was always about like angst and like Bruce Banner and Peter Parker and like real
they're
world.
all miserable people.
DC was the goofier one. I mean, Spider-Man's shtick was that he was constantly joking about a situation. That I mean, if anything, I would say this mythic thing is the problem. That right now in the comics world, we've got this thing where DC's branding themselves as the Trinity. Like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman have to be in everything because they're the Holy Trinity. Like, they're actually using that term, and I'm like, that's the worst thing you could do, is to put them up on a pedestal, because it kind of craps on everybody, all the other characters, like Booster Gold, all the other fan favorites, and it's like, you put this impossible expectation on it. If a Superman movie has to be an important movie, I think that's the problem. It's like we have to treat it with like this incredible amount of respect, and the character can't survive that. Like, that's the thing with Iron Man. When they made an Iron Man movie, no one had that huge expectations of who Iron Man should be, so they had the freedom to create something with Iron Man.
Well, I think a lot of people had the expectation. It's just, I think they did a well enough job where I also think a lot of the Marvel fans that are like the super fans, there was enough in the movie where we just filled in with our prior knowledge of the character.
Right.
Like, if I ask two different people, like one super fan and one person who's only seen the Marvel universe, and I'm like, oh, is Tony Stark an alcoholic? The fans would be like, of course he's an alcoholic. They show that he's an alcoholic. And, my friend who pretty much only likes the movies is like, oh, he's not an alcoholic. He's like a social drinker. And I'm like, no, he's a hopeless alcoholic.
That's what also shows like how smart Marvel is compared to like Warner Brothers, in that like just casting Robert Downey Jr. alone as Tony Stark, just like subconsciously, even if they never go to the demon in a bottle storyline in the movies, just having Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark makes that connection in your brain, even if you're not a fan of the comics. Do you know what I mean? Like, that to me, that just shows Marvel is just playing a different game than DC, whereas DC is just struggling to rekindle whatever that casting magic of like Christopher Reeve 40 years ago. You know, like, we're going to get an unknown, and we're going to make him a star. And people forget, like, Christopher Reeve was only in one and a half really good Superman movies. Like, he was in way more shitty Superman movies than he was in good Superman movies. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, look, all I care about now is this, all right? Now that Guardians of the Galaxy has made it safe for terrible superhero teams to exist, Alpha Flight is going to come. That's all I care about right now.
well, but see, Fox, that's the other difference. Fox owns the rights to Alpha Flight. Yeah, they're
What?
X-Men. Alpha Flight are X-Men. So, like,
No.
I think
the way they split up the rights.
yeah,
X-Men.
they're the Canadian
I
X-Men.
would actually argue that a great big part of what makes the Marvel Cinematic Universe good is that they couldn't do Spider-Man and X-Men.
Yep.
Is that they stole those rights, and so those really big, like, big-name properties with all the expectations, they couldn't use it. They had to be more creative than that.
That's
Like,
a
if you
good
could
point, actually.
a DC Cinematic Universe that didn't have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and you had to work with everything else, maybe it would suck. There's a good chance it would suck, but they'd have a challenge put in front of them. They couldn't just coast, you know.
But again, I
And
think that's a good point of, like, why Arrow and Flash are succeeding, because they can't use Batman and Superman on those shows, and those shows are arguably more successful than their movie division right now. So
It's like, I honestly think Arrow got a huge audience because it had a lead-in show where people were already kind of whipped up into a frenzy, and then you had dudes just to take their shirt off like every episode for no good reason, and like do that like weird ab exercise, which he doesn't do any other exercise, and like,
you know, Stephen Amell kills the
The
salmon.
American Ninja, the American Ninja.
Salmon.
yeah. I still can't stomach that show. I've been hate watching that show since the day it started, and
You're
I've seen
watching
every
it.
episode.
You're
I
still
watched
watching
it because of We Nerd Hard, at a podcast I do, and they want to talk about Arrow, and I think they do it just because they know how much it upsets me. Especially because I love Huntress. It's like my heart, and to see a character that was pretty much like Batman told that chick, like, hey, I think you should dial it back a bit. And then she's like, oh, you rich boy, you totally have to tell me how to use my own weapon. It just, part of me just wants to just vomit blood.
No, but Arthur's point is really good about not having access to the big hitters, because that's, you know, to me, again, that's the amazing thing about Marvel's success, is that they've taken like Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Then Marvel should restrict itself to Namor the Submariner for the next 5 movies. And
They might. I mean, they
I
can make
would
it work.
watch a Namor movie.
They can. Well, the funny thing about Namor, honestly, though, is that he's another character whose rights are kind of like up in the air. Like, he's a.
Yeah.
how do you know all
so,
this shit, man?
How do I know? That's my job to know all this stuff, man.
Doesn't he come with the Fantastic Four? Whoever has
Right.
those rights.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
he's got that, but he's also got because I think Kevin Feige said like they don't necessarily have the rights, but it might be like one of those Quicksilver.
There was literally an interview about Namor the Submariner somewhere that you've seen where they discuss they are complaining that they don't have the rights to him as if it matters.
Namor's awesome. What are you talking about?
He is pretty awesome.
That's a niche for an Asian leading man, you know, if they ever do that.
Like, for all reports are pointing at Jason Momoa playing Aquaman in the DC movies. I think he would be a dope Namor instead.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I wonder which Aquaman are they going for? Is it going to be like, like battle hardened, I have a harpoon for a hand?
It's going to be whatever the grimmest, darkest version of Aquaman you can find is going to be the one that's going to be in the Dawn of Justice. Anyway.
I just want Young Justice. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I think DC animation has just dwarves DC movies as far as storytelling, quality, character development. They're just so much better that I just don't feel the need to watch the movies.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I can watch the DC animation of Wonder Woman. That I love that, or I'll watch Young Justice. You know, rest in peace, died too soon.
Yeah.
Or I could watch the whole series of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Like,
Exactly. Me too. Why can't DC do a Young Justice movie like they did the animation for it? I mean, that was an extremely interesting storyline from the beginning. I mean, I started watching it because my kids were watching it, and then and then we really got into it. I mean that's a great segue into storytelling. I just don't know why they never pick up on stuff like that and bring it into the bigger screen.
Well, I mean, I think we firmly established DC has the TV and animation game online. I mean, Marvel's TV shows and animation have not been great. So I mean, maybe that's the balance. Marvel owns the box office. The TV belongs to DC, and we're just
and video games.
And video games.
Like,
I mean, the Arkham games.
Yeah. Like, say what you will about the writing in the Arkham franchise, but is there anything else that's even like good in
comic books, video game?
Yeah.
If it's Lego related, maybe.
That's the other thing. Like Chris Pratt being in the Lego movie, like he was in two of my favorite movies this year. This is like the Lego movie and Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah,
but that's what I like. I like him as that kind of like ineffectual nerd dude. I don't like the dude.
But that's who Star-Lord was. Star-Lord was, to me, Star-Lord was an ineffectual.
Star-Lord was a dick, but he wasn't. He was not.
He wasn't
like
100% a dick.
I really think everybody's like going, oh, Chris Pratt's transfer. He wasn't like ugly before. He was just a little chubby. Like I kind of. I still would have made out with Chris Pratt before to make it out with him now. I mean, I'd probably ask him to take his shirt off.
On Parks and Rec, you could see why Rashida Jones would date Chris Pratt. That was believable. It was like maybe she could do better, but you know, it made sense. It was.
But I think maybe it's the Andy Dwyer-ness of it all. That I feel like he never came off as a dude bro to me in Guardians of the Galaxy, even when he was being dude bro-ish, I guess. Like he still came off as like a lovable loser. He was not as cool as he thought he was. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that was like how that character played for me, at least. Like when he's dancing around in the friggin' Temple of Doom in the beginning of the movie, you know, I just thought like this dude's a dork. He's such a dork, but he's an awesome dork. All right, so
the music did it for me at that scene. I totally forgot about everything else, and I was just jamming out to the music the whole time. So
yeah, once Come Get Your Love starts kicking in.
I know. Yeah, once Redbone is played, I just forget about whatever I'm doing and I just jam. You know.
And that's when I'm going to cue Hooked on a Feeling and end this podcast for now. It was a lively one, definitely. I wanted to thank my guests. N'Jaila Rhee, you can find her on Twitter at BlasianBitch and at WeNerdHard.com. Do you have any other URLs you want to share?
Relaunching. You can also listen to me nerd out on We Nerd Hard, the podcast, which you can listen to on twib.fm. And if you don't like nerding out and you like talking about dirty things with your bodies, you can listen to me talk about sex-positive stuff on After Dark on twib.fm.
Awesome. And hopefully you'll be back on Hard Knock Life again in the future.
Sure.
You won't take such a long break. So thank you, N'Jaila. Also, I want to give a big shout-out to Rodrigo for joining us. You can find him on Twitter at RSE Spoken Word.
But just hopefully enjoy more discussions and write more about Korra and wrestling, hopefully. So
yeah, that's right. Look for more of Rodrigo's writing on the Nerds of Color. Also, big thanks for taking a beating on tonight's show, Jeff Yang. Find him on Twitter at
just because you have booze, you won, right?
Yeah, you won. You won the alcohol game. You got the alcohol game online. Follow Jeff on Twitter at Original Spin, and you can read his columns on the Wall Street Journal online. Hopefully, you will have a piece we can share on the Nerds of Color soon, right, Jeff?
Yeah. One of them goes.
Also, finally, big thanks to Arthur Chu for joining us. Find his writings on the Daily Beast, and you can follow him on Twitter at Arthur Effect.
Also, the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions. I'll be on that.
Oh,
when does that air?
I don't. Not for a while, but you know, might as well start plugging.
Sure, why not? Thank you for watching Hard Knock Life. I'll see you next time.
Keystone Quadrant, fellow guardian, save Star-Lord from the negative zone I'm hardly ever noticed. But a master with the guns and the strategy, backing me up is the baddest team in the galaxy. Yes, he's a tree, but he's my best friend, and Gamora's the deadliest woman in all the land. And Drax, well, his name says it all, destroy shit. Once worked a time league, no, it employed this raccoon. But now that I saved the Earth, people people doubt me, I'm for everything in its worth. Backed by Stark Industries, something bigger is coming, and so we're armed with every gun on the mark.